The next story is ready. It's Come on, let's watch it together.
After the trial ended and the courtroom finally emptied, I expected to feel relief wash over me like cool rain after a long drought. Instead, a heavy exhaustion settled into my bones, deeper than any tiredness I had known before. Truth, I discovered, has its own weight, solid, unyielding, and strangely exhausting when you have carried it alone for so long. For weeks afterward, my body operated on autopilot. I rose at the same hour each morning, brewed coffee I barely tasted, walked the same streets, and returned home to sleep without dreams. Justice had been delivered in measured, legal syllables, but healing refused to follow the same tidy schedule. It demanded time, silence, and patience, qualities I was only beginning to understand. The old farmhouse on the edge of town became my sanctuary during those blurred months. It stood quiet and unpretentious, surrounded by overgrown fields that my grandfather had once tended with meticulous care. I drove there almost every day, parking beneath the sagging oak that had shaded his porch for decades. Inside, I opened windows that had remained sealed for years, letting in slants of sunlight along with the faint smell of mildew and aged wood. Dust motes danced in the beams like tiny ghosts, and with each breath, memories stirred, some gentle, some sharp. Every room carried his imprint. The worn armchair by the window still held the faint curve where his shoulders had rested for countless evenings. The chipped ceramic coffee mug sat on the kitchen counter, never replaced despite its cracks. He had always said a good mug, like a good friend, earned its scars. The ancient radio on the shelf still crackled to life if you turned the dial with just the right patience, pulling in faint stations from distant towns. The house no longer felt like mere walls and roof. It had become a quiet witness, holding every secret, every unspoken word, every moment of love and loss that had passed within its frame. While sorting through his belongings one slow afternoon, I discovered a stack of notebooks tucked behind a row of books on the study shelf. Their covers were plain, leather worn soft from handling. His handwriting filled the pages, neat, deliberate, never rushed. Some entries were practical, columns of numbers tracking savings, expenses, small investments he had made over the years. Others turned inward. He wrote about loneliness that crept in after my grandmother passed, about the disappointment of watching his only daughter drift further away, and about the slow, deliberate practice of forgiveness, not for her sake, but for his own peace. What struck me most was the absence of hatred. Even when he described my mother's actions, the gradual siphoning of funds, the forged signatures, the careful lies, he wrote with calm detachment. Facts lined up like pieces on a chessboard, dates, amounts, conversations recalled word for word. No venom stained the ink. Anger, he wrote in one margin, clouds judgment the way smoke obscures a clear night sky. I choose to see. One passage lodged itself in my mind and refused to leave. He had written about trust, how freely people offer it, like handing over a key without checking the lock, and how rarely it is truly earned through consistent action. He admitted the betrayal had cut deeply, a wound not visible but felt in every quiet moment, yet he refused to let emotion dictate his response. To react in rage, he noted, is to surrender control to the very lie you despise. Better to wait, document, protect what is real. The truth needs no champion who shouts, it needs one who endures. Those words became my anchor in the months that followed. Running the bookstore slowly returned rhythm to my days. At first, foot traffic was sparse. I placed no bold signs outside, ran no social media campaigns. I simply opened the door each morning and let the space speak for itself. Word traveled the old-fashioned way, through quiet recommendations over coffee, through someone noticing the warm light spilling onto the sidewalk after dusk. Customers began to linger. A college student would settle into the corner armchair with a novel and stay for hours. An elderly man played solitary chess against himself at the small table near the window. Others simply sat, absorbing the hush, grateful for a place that asked nothing of them. No performance, no explanation, no pretense. When people asked about the name, Patience and Pages, I offered only the simplest truth. It was my grandfather's name for the kind of life he lived. He loved books and he loved waiting for the right moment. That was enough. Not every story needs to be unpacked fully to be respected. Guilt arrived in waves, usually late at night when the world felt too still. I would lie awake wondering if a different path existed, if I had confronted my mother years earlier, if I had spoken privately instead of letting the evidence accumulate until the law became inevitable. Would the fallout have been smaller? Would fewer people have been hurt? Each time those questions rose, I forced myself back to the facts, cold and unchanging. She had made choices, deliberate and repeated. Consequences were not punishment invented by me. They were the natural result of actions she had chosen. Accepting that distinction did not erase the ache, but it kept me from drowning in self-blame. Therapy, which I had stubbornly avoided for most of my adult life, became part of the routine. The therapist's office smelled faintly of lavender and old paper. We spoke about layers of betrayal, not just the financial one, but the deeper violation of family trust. She helped me see that loyalty does not mean blindness, and love does not require silence in the face of harm. One session, she said something that landed like truth. You didn't shatter the family, Zane. You simply refused to pretend the cracks weren't there. That takes courage, not cruelty. My mother's letters arrived less often as time passed. Her handwriting, once careful and looping, grew shaky and uneven. The tone shifted in stages, first self-pity, then sharp bitterness, and eventually a weary resignation. In one of the last letters she wrote, she asked directly, "Do you hate me?" I read the question twice, folded the paper neatly, and placed it in the drawer with the others. I never replied. Hate demanded energy I had decided to reserve for living instead. Wyatt was released sooner than the sentence had suggested. Good behavior, perhaps, or some procedural adjustment. The news reached me through a curt email from the court clerk, not through family channels. He never contacted me. I didn't expect him to. Shame or pride or some mixture of both kept him distant, and I let that distance remain. Closure, I learned, does not always arrive wrapped in conversation. Sometimes it settles quietly when you realize the explanations you once craved no longer matter. On the first anniversary of my grandfather's death, I organized a small chess night at the bookstore. I didn't call it a memorial, too heavy a word for such a gentle evening, but that's what it became in my heart. Tables were arranged with boards, sets of pieces gleaming under soft lamps. Children arrived with parents. Beginners sat beside seasoned players. Strangers played strangers. Laughter mixed with the soft click of pieces being placed, the occasional groan of realization after a blunder. Watching them, thinking, pausing, deciding, brought back my grandfather's voice so clearly I almost turned to look for him. Chess, he always said, teaches the one lesson life repeats endlessly. Every choice carries consequence, and no one can move your piece for you. After the last guest left, I sat alone at the board and replayed the opening he had taught me when I was 9. Pawn to e4, knight to f3. His instructions were calm, never hurried. Don't rush to capture, see the whole board first. Winning had never been his goal, understanding had been. I moved the pieces slowly, letting memory guide my hands. The funds from the account stayed mostly untouched in the beginning. Over time, I began donating portions quietly, no fanfare, no announcements, to programs that protected elders from financial abuse, to legal aid clinics that helped people who could not afford representation, to small community libraries days in towns even quieter than ours. Each transfer felt like redirecting something that had waited too long for a better purpose. Greed had corrupted it once, now it could protect instead. That felt like the truest honor I could offer my grandfather's patience. People sometimes assume justice delivers happiness on a silver platter. It doesn't. Justice brings clarity, sharp, sometimes painful, but clean. Peace grows from that clarity, slowly, unevenly, honestly. Happiness, I came to understand, is constructed later through small daily choices, steady routines, and a commitment to living with integrity even when no one is watching. Customers occasionally shared pieces of their own lives with me, stories of inheritance disputes that fractured families, of betrayals buried under years of polite silence, and truths too heavy to speak until they could no longer be contained. I listened more than I spoke.
I spoke, not because I held perfect answers, but because I knew the power of simply being heard without judgment, without interruption, without advice that wasn't asked for. The old passbook still rests in the small safe under my desk. I rarely open it now. I don't need to. Its value was never in the numbers printed inside. It was in what it proved. Proof that truth, when sheltered and defended, can outlast even the most patient deception. Proof that patience is not passivity, it is strategy, strength, and sometimes the only weapon that works. Late at night, after switching off the last lamp and turning the key in the lock, I often pause on the sidewalk and look back through the window. The shelves stand in quiet rows, the chairs wait patiently, the chessboard sits ready for tomorrow's game. The space feels alive in its stillness, like a story continuing on its own terms, even when the reader has stepped away. My grandfather once wrote in the margin of a notebook, "The most dangerous lies are the ones everyone silently agrees to accept." I understand that now with painful clarity. Silence can shield injustice just as fiercely as words can dismantle it. Knowing when to speak and when to wait is not cowardice or weakness, it is wisdom earned the hard way. This story did not close with fireworks, triumphant music, or tearful reunions. It ended with something quieter and more durable: balance. Truth standing calmly where deception once held court. A steady understanding that not every battle must be loud to matter, and not every victory needs to be seen by the crowd to count. And if there is one lesson I carry forward now, etched deeper than any scar, it is this: the truth does not rush, it does not beg, it does not need anyone's permission. It waits, patient, persistent, inevitable. And when the moment is truly right, it speaks for itself.